Ever since I was a young boy living on the other side of the tracks, I always dreamed that one day I'd leave Westmead and never look back. 'Cause I want to live in Belmead, don't you? I want to be seen jogging up and down the boulevard by every BMW, Mercedes, and Jaguar. Oh, I want to live in Belmead proper, don't you? I wanna be a member of the Belmead Country Club, be seen at the Swan Ball and of course Barry's Pub. I wanna live in Belmead proper, don't you? I wanna roll and roll and roll and roll, honey, in all that old, 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 old green money. With my bank account in the black, I'm gonna spend and spend and never look back, 'cause I'm gonna live in Belmead. I want to be seen jogging up and down the boulevard by every BMW, Mercedes, and Jaguar. Oh, I wanna live in Belmead proper, don't you? Of course I want a big house on the boulevard too, but if I can't, I'll take Jackson, Linwood, even Lake Avenue, as long as it's in Belmead proper, it will do. I wanna roll and roll and roll and roll, honey, and all that old, 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 old green money. With my bank account in the black, I'm gonna spend and spend and never look back, 'cause I'm gonna live in Belmead. And if they won't let me move on in, I'll marry a billion zillion heiress, and then I'll buy it all up. Well, ain't it a pity? I'll tear it all down, say goodbye Belmead City, if I can't live in Belmead. I want to be seen jogging up and down the boulevard by every BMW, Mercedes, and Jaguar. Oh, I wanna live in Belmead proper, don't you? Give me that old 37205. Only Belmead proper will do. Take me home now to Belmead proper and you.
Welcome to Big Blend Radio with Nancy and Lisa, the crazy mother-daughter travel team and publishers of Big Blend Radio and TV magazine, and also Parks and Travel magazine. You just heard Belmead Proper by author, musician, interior designer, and gallery owner j-ronald-m-york. Now, Ron is the author of the memoir Kept in the Dark, and today he's joining us to talk about his follow-up memoir, Songs from an Imperfect Life. It is a topic that a lot of us are going to identify with. It's a topic of, sweep under the rug. We were just saying that earlier here. And it's something that everyone should read, and just to create a bigger understanding in life of what can happen in your childhood to adulthood, and how do you handle with those imperfections of life, which, you know, every apple that gets a bite out from a bird knows that that was a good tree then, you know? So I always say, like, imperfections are good. They create character.
Well, diversity is a good way of
That's a
saying
good
it.
one. There you
Yes.
go. That's why Nancy's here on the show, to make sure I know what I'm saying. But everyone, Songs from an Imperfect Life, you can get on Amazon, all those great online stores. But I also encourage you to go to Ron's website. It's j-ronald-m-york, M as in Madame Tussauds. There you go. And so welcome to the show, Ron. How are you?
I am great, thank you. I've never been introduced quite like that, so that's fun.
It's a little different there, but you know, you've got a lot of initials there, but you like to go by Ron, right?
I do go by Ron. Yes, I was blessed with lots of names, and there's some interesting history on some of those names as well.
I bet.
Okay.
I mean, you've got a treasure trove of history, some good, some like, you know. It's interesting because, you know, reading this, your book, Songs from an Imperfect Life, I want to go back now and read Kept in the Dark. And like I said in the introduction here, it just really connects with us all, I think, in some way, especially, you know, we look at what's going on with the Me Too movement. But, you know, we never hear much about what's happening to men and to young boys growing up, and the issues that they face. But I do want to say you went from Miami to Nashville, right? Because your accent does not sound Miami at all.
Well, I'm probably more Southern than you want. You got to get all those syllables
Wow.
in there.
Oh, good.
We left Miami when I was 3 years old.
Mm.
And if I can backtrack just a little bit on how this came about, my parents saved a box of letters exchanged between them when my dad had been arrested and was held in jail, and newspaper clippings and photographs. It was of a crime that I never knew my entire life. My relatives knew, our friends from Miami knew, but I went through this box 15 years after my father had passed away, and my mother had been long gone before that. And what they had saved told of a crime that my father had been arrested for molesting a 13-year-old scout in the Boy Scout troop where he was scoutmaster. He and his best friend, who was assistant scoutmaster, were arrested on these charges, and my father was held in jail for 8 weeks, and my parents exchanged 100 letters during that time between them. That was the way they could communicate. And so I had this shock of finding out this about my dad. I had the newspaper clippings that told the technical side of it. I had their letters that told what they went through, and I think they purposely saved that so that I would know at some point. And so I wrote the first book. I thought it's an amazing story, and I wanted to write that. But in telling that, I felt I also need to tell about the parents that I knew, but then I also need to tell that we left Miami to escape all of that scandal, came to Nashville, Tennessee, joined the Downtown Baptist Church, and within the next couple of years, I started being molested in the church. And at that point, that was all that I was going to say on the subject. But when the book came out about my parents, so many people reached out to me with similar stories, some of them telling their stories for the first time. And I thought, if my embarrassing life and situations that I have lived through can help start dialogue, so then it was worth it to me to go ahead and tell my story, which is where we are today with Songs from an Imperfect Life.
And we really appreciate you telling this story, because there's a lot of stories in this, but there's to me, it's a difficult one. You use the word embarrassing, and I think that is anybody who's been a victim of molesting, any kind of molesting, or being groped or raped. Embarrassment is part of why you don't raise your head up. There's a, you know, it's why we take showers after things like that. It's like that immediate. You feel, you know, violated, and that is embarrassment comes to play in a big way, especially as a young person, and you don't know how to get past that. And then almost the victimhood part almost becomes even bigger through yourself. You almost make yourself a bigger victim through that.
Well, this started when I was 7, and it started within the church. And so at that age, you don't know what is happening. And my abusers were not violent. I mean, I was not harmed. The term I've learned now is grooming. I mean, they showed the attention to me, and but I never told my parents of this. I don't know why. I sometimes I think back and you know I think, well, maybe I was warned not to, and I didn't want to get in trouble, but I never told them. And of course now I know what they were hiding, and I actually have a line in the book that says we were living parallel lies. And I mean we both had these facades keeping up, and neither really knew of the other.
Wow, that's amazing. And music, we just played Belle Meade proper, and I love that song. Like I was saying earlier, that you've got like a cross between Elvis and Roy Orbison's genteel side of your voice, and just a really catchy song. How did music work into your life? Was that something, I know when I went through bad things in my life, that poetry and music and the arts were like these escapes of where I could almost write things that if anybody picked it up, almost hoping that they were so like vague that people wouldn't understand what it was, but it was my own code. You know what I mean when you write?
And I think that's where I was on this. I mean, I was forced to take piano. You know, I hated it as a child, and then learned to love it once I could actually play. And songs started happening. And with this book, I finally decided I wanted some professional help on this, and as far as a therapist, and mainly because I wanted to ask them questions as far as my behavior, why I acted out, why I did the things I did as a reaction to what was happening to me. And I told the therapist, I said, you know, I'm writing a book. And he said, and that's fine. He said, but don't think of it as a book or you're going to censor yourself. Just put it all down, and then you can figure it out. And he said, did you ever keep a diary or a journal? And I didn't. But as I started writing, I'm writing this one story about something in college, and I'm thinking, wait, I wrote a song for this guy. And so I pulled out this file of old lyrics, and all of a sudden I started reading through things all the way back to junior high, which some of them were painfully bad. But I realized I had been journaling all along, because these lyrics reflected the good, the bad, the awful that was going on in my life. And so that's how it came about, that I incorporated these lyrics, intertwined them in with the stories that I was telling.
I'm glad you did, because there's this, it gives you a breather from the stories too. It allows you to, you need to take a breath on some of it. You really do, because you're dealing with, you know, true life things that happened. Some really cool, and then some you're like, oh man, you know. And it's you need that musical interlude, you know, just to give you that breath of knowing that there's always hope. And I feel like music sometimes always allows us to know that there's always another song to play and to listen to, and there's always hope. I just always feel that about music.
I like that definition and all. And I did want, I have had a great life. I have had some wonderful things that have happened in my life. And then I've had some bad things. And the book focuses on that, but I did not want to leave the reader thinking that my whole life has been this way. And so that's why I tried to bring in some of the more lighthearted stories, also some of the fun things that have occurred, and the lyrics, I think, help with that. And then also the vintage photos, which, of course, part of it, as you were reading about something that happened to a 7-year-old or a 10-year-old, to be able to look across the page and see that child, I think really puts it in perspective, because some of the situations you would think would be uncomfortable if the person was an adult, but when you realize the age of what was happening to me, and be able to see that photo, I think you can then kind of
perspective. Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
It really does. It brings people home, and it gives you. You've got the musical side, the poetry, and when I look at it too, and you look at some of the stories. Obviously, we can discuss that. But going through, and I mean, this is you got to think back at the time too, and also a lot of this coming out of a church, and we've all heard what's happened with the Catholic Church, and all the young boys being molested there, and I just never knew it about. I never thought about okay, the Southern Baptist Church, this is what's going on. And then there's the side of you also, being in the South in a time frame where if you're gay, that's frowned upon, and you don't just go, you can't just be out. And so you're that, and also going through molesting. And I feel like that's a very interesting place to be, not necessarily positive, but it's this place of, and we were talking about this with some friends, there's always this stigma of people being scared of, back in the day, of gay people, whether you're, a lesbian or a gay man. Like I have a friend, she's a lesbian lady, and her brother was scared to let his daughters go on a hike with her or go out with her alone. The kids, the boys, that's okay, but the girls, he's scared of. This is the Catholic side.
There's
anyway,
that mentality, unfortunately.
But yeah, so she, she's going to do something, and I always saw that, even growing up and being raised in South Africa, during my teens, a lot of my friends were gay, and there was no way in hell that they were going to say anything to anybody.
No, they
couldn't. You're going to get beaten up, and that's it, And so there was always this, quiet side, which just, I think that's a very difficult way to live. But then when you're also being molested, but there's this side where I want to go, okay, everybody, these are what, straight men, gay men, what? I mean, this fear of molesting, which has always been from just what I've seen growing up, is people thought gay men were doing that, not necessarily straight men. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's difficult to talk about, but that's kind of that stigma.
And unfortunately, with gay, I think there are some people that think that they are molesting children. Mm-hmm. When that's a whole different thing. Mm-hmm. The pedophile doesn't necessarily have to even be gay to molest children. That's but with this happening to me at such a young age and in the church, and the confused sexual feelings then as puberty started, and there was never really anyone that I felt I could talk to. I didn't feel like I could tell my parents. I thought they would be upset or disappointed in me. I certainly didn't think there was anyone in the church that I could tell what was going on. And as far as my own peers and all, I was already being, made fun of and bullied on occasion. So you're so fearful as a child to tell something on you that if they don't understand, they turn around and use it against you. So it was just something I always kept to myself.
And that grooming side too that you talk about in the book too, I think that's a huge part of it, because I always wonder how, I think that there's this weird thing happening, especially when you're really young, where, I don't know, it's almost like there's a sign on our backs like, hey, someone did this to me, so like, I've been there, done that. It's almost like they can smell it if you've been through it,
it's predator and prey.
Right.
And
as
predator
kids,
is a predator for a reason, because they have the ability to seek out prey with a number of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you're looking at humans instead of animals, although we are still animals, when you're looking at nature, you're thinking, oh, eyesight, smell, and behavior patterns. When you're looking at humans, I think it's not really that hard for a predator to figure out the prey. I think that's what they spend a lot of time doing.
I agree. I mean, the things that I have read when I was researching on the first book, as far as my father being a scoutmaster and all, and reading about how those in scouting and how they would kind of look for the child that may be having problems at home, or that just can befriend them. And as I go in the book, moving from the church and then into the downtown area when I was around 10 or so, and I would come into work with my mother in the summers, and I'd be given a few dollars and just go, to a double feature downtown, or it was just a block or so away, or get some lunch or whatever as by myself. And but a young boy by himself in at that point we had these huge cavernous downtown movie theaters. Of course, they're all gone now, but there could be less than a dozen people in there for a workday matinee, and I'm sitting by myself, and next thing I know, someone's wanting to sit with me, and I wasn't afraid because I was used to this behavior from church.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's where that grooming comes in.
Well, it's an interesting way when we go back to the predator who has the ability, go back to nature. The predator knows where to hide, or she knows where to hide. You lay low in the grass till the prey runs by and then spring out. They know how to do that, and so it's really not different.
But then as you grow, you start to utilize that, and that's something you talked about in your book too.
That's survival.
Yeah, there's everybody. Again, Songs from an Imperfect Life. You talk about, it's almost like you can flip the tables on them, and now that you know that this is what they're doing to you, there's you're trying to get control of your life. Really, I think in that age, you don't quite understand it, but hey, if I want candy, I know how to make him give it to me. You know what I mean?
And it did reach that point. As I said, as puberty, set in, and things that were happening. At the very beginning, there was really no sexual feeling towards that, but as your body starts awakening to that, and you start craving that, and I became aware of the power that I had, that I, what power I had over men, and I say in situation that that there were some men that were not interested in me, and at that point I'm thinking to myself, well, what's wrong with me? Now I look back and think, oh my God, they were smart enough to stay away from a child,
Right.
that, or they were not attracted to a child, but for me, I was so used to men being attracted to me or wanting me that I just felt like everybody did.
It's interesting, with women, like we always notice there's women who we say have little girl voice, and they talk in a baby voice. And I've always wondered, well, when are you ever going to change your voice because you're now an adult? And I read something a long time ago about where baby voice came from, and it was really to do with being molested at a young age and trying to stay in a certain stage of your life where you felt you had a little more happiness or control, or you felt like you could hoodwink a guy into baby voice. And it's so complex.
Yeah, it's interesting with that, because I think that's the thing that you bring up, Ron, that it is complex, and it's like it comes at you in a million ways. You know what I mean? And it does stay with you in a bunch of different ways. That kind of thing, where women do have that different side when it happens to them.
Well, and I've said what I look back now and realize that I could step over a line and nothing happened. And then I could step over another line and nothing happened. And then another and another and another, until all of a sudden I realized I am so far over the line in risky behavior and things that are happening to me. And then there's this fear of, how do I get myself back to where I was? Because it was like things came easily without consequences, and until I had gone so far that there was consequence.
You talk about PTSD, and I never thought of that being in that term. You think of that if you've been to war or you've gone through, a hurricane or something like that, that you have, some big traumatic event. And I thought that you talking about that in your book was so important, because I don't think we realize the emotional PTSD that comes from abuse, especially when it becomes a part of the life cycle, which it did for you. You're just going round in that cycle, and you're in that zone where you do keep crossing those lines like you talk about, and then it becomes a habit, and yet you're not really checking into the true core. And when you are taken advantage of so many times, and then you start to leverage that, eventually that's where your value is sitting, and that's where there's that need, that there's that hole, like really, where there's like, can we have some real love around here? You know what I mean? Not just flesh. I'd like some real love. I'd like someone to really care and hold my hand, just to hold my hand out of pure love, right? That's what.
And as you saw in the book, that's something that has eluded me. So, and when I talked with the therapist, I said, my concern is what happened to me as a child. Writing about that, I said, people I think will sympathize with because I was a child. I said the behavior that I exhibited as I got older, I think people would say he should have known better. Yeah. And the therapist just looked at me and said, but why? Why should you have known better when your life started with sex way before you were ever able to understand it, and lies and secrets and hiding? Why do you think that all of a sudden, because you've reached a certain age, that you know better, when this is that you didn't have the foundation as a child? So that was a hard thing for me to kind of come to terms with. And that's when I say embarrassing behavior, because when I got older and I still was taking risk and doing things like that I look back and think I should have known better. But somehow I didn't. I was just used to that type of behavior.
I love that you take an ownership of the ongoing situation of life cycles, right? Yes. All of these issues and things that are developed from abuse, really. Coming to terms with it and having to stare it in its face, and it's an ugly face to look at. It's horrible. And how we react and how we do things is a reaction, and especially from a young age. And then the reaction becomes a cycle, the ripple effect. And I just really respect, number one, you telling your story to everybody. It means a lot to all of us. And
thank you.
On top of that, for you to, your parents left Miami and went to Nashville. You stuck it out there as a business owner. You own a gallery. You had the Christmas store. I want to talk about Christmas ornaments. Christmas stores rock. You had all these, interior design. You got into real estate and all of these things, and also worked with your dad and, your relationship with your parents. So you're ingrained in this community of Nashville back in the day, right? And here it is, country town, country music town, where I'm thinking okay, how's everyone handling this over there? And you didn't leave. You stayed in the community while you're going through all of that. And I think that is really a big deal, because it's easy to leave and move to another town and start clean. But now you've just let it all out. You're like, that's it.
I have let it out. And I had a couple of close friends early on that said, are you worried about your business? Do you think people wouldn't want to shop with you? And I said, there's no way of telling. But if that happens, it happens. I have to be honest with. But one thing that was so funny early on, one of the artists that I represent, who is older than me, and I was kind of concerned on how she would take some of the things that I reveal in the book. And she called me just early on in the book, before she'd gotten very far, where there was about me shoplifting a magazine. And she called and said, I just read about you shoplifting. And she said, you just became infinitely more interesting. Like, okay, then.
Fizzle.
But the response has been amazing. The outreach to people have come into my life because of both of these books now, that because they feel a connection, and and so if some have left my life because of it, others have filled in. So I'm very grateful.
I think everybody's got skeletons. They really do. I mean, I don't know anybody who hasn't got something in their family somewhere that they're like, I don't want to talk about it, or they're at the point where they really want to talk about it and get it out in the open and kind of get past it. We've all got that. Nobody has perfect parents. Nobody is perfect within themselves. So, I mean, it's kind of a check-in kind of thing. So I think, you're going to have the people who are always going to be mean no matter what, because they got a real problem going on with insecurity. And then there's other people who are going to be open to it. And then there's other people who just don't care. They're just like, well, it's got nothing to do with
walking
me.
zombies.
Yeah, move on. It's like, what's for dinner? It's kind of like that.
They're the ones with the tin can beers.
Right. So, I mean, it is what it is. You're never going to be like, you're never going to have everybody on your side, and you're never going to have everybody against you.
But I think this is so important, what you're doing in Nashville. I mean, you've got a gallery. People can get your book at your gallery, and, and your music. We got to talk about that. But being part of Nashville's history, your family, you, and just being there and then spreading it out, the story, I feel like, it's creating a network and a community, because I don't think you can go through these kinds of things you can't do it on your own. I believe that. I believe that. And sometimes you say some people leave and then more people come in. We're swinging doors, it's like sometimes you have to toss them out too. You don't have to just wait. Just kick them out and bring someone in.
And I was concerned with the first book when I'm telling this about my father, because my father was a pillar in the community. And as I say in the first book, I think he spent the next 40 years of his life after that trying to make amends. And when he died suddenly, and I'm standing in the funeral home, I stood there for 3 or 4 hours. The line was out the door. People from all walks of life that had a story of how he had helped in some way, whether get a job or financially or just so many good works that he did. And so to put out this thing about something that happened all those years ago that he was accused of in Miami, I felt bad that I was tarnishing his reputation, but so many people that came to me that had known him, that were peers of his and all, and said, I know the father, I know the man that I've known all these years, and this does not change what I think about him. And so, people are forgiving and understanding and realize that we all have the skeletons. And
that's a big one, though. That's big. The forgiveness side, it doesn't mean you forget, right? The forgive and forget thing doesn't work. It's about having freedom, right? Isn't it about that? It's about let it out. And part of writing and putting it out in the world, I almost feel like you're releasing your dad too. It's like letting him just finally breathe over something, horrific, it's tragic. It's a thing that goes on. That kind of thing is a big deal. And when you're living with it every single day, how do you get rid of it? I think forgiveness is one of the most powerful things and one of the hardest things to do,
I think my parents never had the freedom that I now have because the story is out there. They always were fearful of it coming out. And I can imagine, I mean, of course, in this day and time, you couldn't do anything without it being online within minutes. But in the 50s with the crime in Miami and then moving to Tennessee, that there still would always be the possibility of someone saying something to somebody and it traveling and their life just changed forever here in Tennessee. So there would be that fear. And I also think with my mother, there would always be the fear, just like an alcoholic is just one drink away from relapsing, and and watching my father and anything that he did that seemed out of the ordinary, of wondering. And so I have the freedom now of my life being exposed, and but they never did have that freedom.
You know, it's interesting. Like, I know, like, how my father was, and he once threw me off a pier in San Clemente Beach when I think I was a year and a half, 2 years old, and he got arrested because that's considered child abuse because I didn't know how to swim. I was just a baby, and that was his excuse was he was teaching me to swim, and I didn't know about it because my parents didn't tell me about it, but I grew up with this fear of walking on a pier where you could see the water between the wooden planks and stepping over and being scared. And my mom, I know now that she knew because she would put me on her back and carry me. So she knew. But nobody ever told me until my dad passed away and my grandmother told me. And so, yeah, I never knew that had happened. I obviously had some baggage from it, but then when I looked at my dad's history and who his father was, you start to go, okay, wait a minute, this is handed down from somewhere else. And I'm not excusing the behavior. I'm saying that people are products of things that have happened to them, whether they understand it or not. And in times of stress or illness or whatever, they react more than they think. So, it's like it would be interesting if you maybe knew the history of your father, and maybe there would be something there that would give you a clue as to why he did the things he did.
There so often someone who has been abused goes on to abuse somebody.
Exactly.
And so I have wondered that about my dad, what the history was. I did find a journal of his when he was, I think, around 12 or 13, and his father had remarried. His mother had died. He didn't get along with his stepmother, and his father traveled all the time. In this diary, day after day was an entry that would say, "Daddy gone, Daddy's still gone, Daddy left town today, Daddy." And I wonder about at that age, without a father around, if something had happened to him.
Well, maybe she had a lot of boyfriends while he was gone.
You never know, but
well, you don't.
You never know it. We've learned all kinds of things. I mean, we just found out Nancy has a whole other family.
Well,
not you, your dad. Her dad had 3 wives at the same time, so with 6 kids.
Oh my word!
So, I know we could have like a long conversation of our family, and it goes.
Like, okay.
It's just every time someone dies, we find something new. Yeah, we could write a book about that side, and I know my side too. My father's side is really crazy.
So we're just a big mixed bag of whatever happens.
Yeah, and that's it. You have to get to this point of understanding that, and then you can fix it. And I think that's why I say, but there's a freedom of what you've done. I think it's also really not just interesting, poignant that your relationship with your mom and your dad, and how also not being able to go, hey, I'm gay, let me be, let me go play, let me go, be who I am. And it wasn't just for you. I mean, that was the whole community at that time going through it. And it's and even now we still have problems with our country accepting people who want to be and are born the way they want to be. We have that problem. But
we have a problem with anything that's different.
But it's not
at all.
But it's not. It's
that's different from us. from our
Yes.
beliefs. Yes, it's hard to accept others and all.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. But your parents, your relationship with your dad, as I was reading through, it was like you were building as you were, growing up and then getting into business with him and working with him in the insurance world and then saying, okay, I'm going to go do drag for some fun on the side, but everybody has to keep quiet that it's not me. It's not me. No one needs to know, and then, also your mom, that's a special relationship with your mom. And so there was these really tender parts of your relationship with your parents through all of this, even though everybody, those lines were out there.
my mother and I just um, we had a
Mm.
very special relationship. My father and I were often at odds. He would be proud of me and tell others, but not me.
Mm.
And I always felt like I didn't quite live up to his expectations. And he was somewhat distant from me, and which now I look back knowing what had happened in Miami and that he may have been fearful to be around me,
Mm.
to show affection and all. But my mother was always the buffer between us. And when she passed away at 58, we were left, the two of us, to work it out. And
Mm.
we ended up having a good relationship.
Mm.
Never the relationship I had with my mother, but we certainly did have a decent relationship in the last years of his life. So I was
Mm.
grateful for that. But we were never quite the same, and yet now I know we were very much the same.
It's interesting the years that we're talking about here. My grandmother used to tell me there's a thing when I was growing up called the authority figure. And my dad was very much the authority figure, and my mother didn't rate at all. No decision was ever made by her, it was always by him. And he was very vocal and loud about it. And he always told us, whatever your school teacher says, you do. Whatever a policeman tells you to do, you do. If it's an adult and they tell you to do something, you do it. And I think a lot of us were brought up that way. If there's an authority figure, which means just about anybody older than you do whatever they
Church
say.
clergy,
And
clergy.
that's an authority figure. I
Mm.
mean, this is your path to God. How much more authority do you need? And so here it is, here's these authority figures that are really
Mhm.
um, respected by the community, the policeman, the this, the that. And so you're taught as a kid, whatever they say, you do. And so it's really hard when you're a
Mm.
child and something's happening and you know it's wrong, but you can't say or feel
You don't know it.
you can't say
Mm.
because you've been told this is it, this is how it is, and you do it. And I mean it goes for all kinds of abuse, all
Mhm.
kinds.
Mm.
Well,
Mm.
I
I
Okay.
think
think
we
that may have been why I kept things to myself
Mm.
for so long
Mm.
until it actually then became just a way of life.
Mm.
it's changing now though because we have so much information.
Yeah, that's what is interesting. Like you look at the Me Too movement, and then your story. I'm reading your story, and I'm going, well, how much are we hearing about what happens to men? And I remember, when the Me Too movement set up, I was like, well, I know there's other things people aren't talking about. Um, there's women who molest women. There's women who molest boys. There's, things that those things never get talked about. And then your book, I'm like, okay, so everybody found out at a point about all these young boys being molested by these Catholic priests and clergy and all of that, right?
Yeah.
It's like, here's your cardinal. Sorry, let's go around the corner. And then here it is in the Southern Baptist Church, and at the same time, that's got to be like crazy land for the church itself, especially being in the South at that time. And, that is just like crazy, yet it's happening. So to me, I think you really shone a light for the Me Too movement for
Everybody.
young boys and young girls and getting that out there, because I don't think it's out there enough for people to get it, and for parents to watch their kids. You brought that up at the end of the book about, rescuing a kid out of a restaurant, basically. Hello, parents, go look at what's happening to your child here.
Mhm.
So I think
Yeah,
that
that
you really shake people in a way of like, hey, you need to pay attention to this because it's happening to kids everywhere.
it is. I mean, a pedophile or molester, abuser, I think is always looking for a way in. And
Yeah.
so, and a parent just not even, paying attention to a child, how quickly something could happen. A friend of mine that is still within the church says that with their grandchildren, when they are there, they never let them go in the restroom by themselves in the church. And especially after reading my book. But I mean, things that happened to me were so long ago, but that doesn't mean they've stopped happening.
No.
Actually, the pastor of the church that I was in, the senior pastor, has reached out to me since the book came out, and he was actually at the book signing. And he was not the pastor when I was there. In fact, I'm not even sure he's old enough to have been alive when these things were happening to me, but he reached out to me with so much compassion and apologized for the church, which I, of course, said, it is not your fault. He said, but still, I want to apologize for the church. He then later contacted me because there are 3 men in the church that are on the sexual predator list. They worship there. There are rules set in place to where they have to have somebody with them, and at all times they have to sign in. But with everything going on, he's in an awkward situation because there's some members that think they should be allowed to do that. You should not turn anyone away. And others that are fearful. And in talking with him, I said, you have to do what is best for the church. And if something happened to a child and you were aware they were there, the liability alone against. So he's had kind of a interesting and difficult situation to kind of go through. But what I appreciated so much is his willingness to listen to me about that.
That's a really good point. That's a good point.
So I was very happy that the church is not turning a blind eye to things and willing to look.
It's interesting because, if you watch programs like Law and Order and things like that, they deal with these kind of issues in television. And I know that it's based on fact, but it's really fiction. And I know it's a TV show. But they always say that a sexual predator they can't be cured. They're not going to change. They're always going to be the same. And, so if you watch programs like that and then you hear, well, there's 2 or 3 in your church, that's a problem.
Yeah. It's supposed to be the safe place, but then do you turn people away when, they need to have solace too? It's like if you're in jail, you get to have a priest. It's interesting too because the other point is, going from the Catholic Church, now the Baptist Church, but the reality is whenever you have a group of people in any kind of setting like that, this stuff's going to happen. It really is. And it doesn't matter what religion. I don't care if it's Hindu.
No,
I don't care what it is. It's going to happen because this is the safe space. That's why our schools are in danger, because that's the safe space. And whenever there's a safe space and young people that could be victims, someone's going to go there and they're going to be, the wolf dressed in the sheep's clothing kind of thing. That's going to happen. And they do groom and they do watch. I mean, that becomes their career of who they are. They live for it. And I just feel like that's the important thing too that came out of you sharing your story is it's not really just one church. That was the church that you were in part of. It's not just the Catholics, but it's going to be in all these circumstances, for kids.
Well, even as I was writing the first book, and which of course is based on the crime of my father with the Scouts and all, and this it came out 2 years ago, but as I am writing it, there's an article in the paper of a Scoutmaster arrested on the same street where our family home had been. I did not know him and anything, but on numerous charges, and this was 2 years ago. So it is still happening, and so unprotected youth without chaperones and all this can easily, someone can befriend them, and next thing you know, something has happened.
And you got to watch the chaperone. That's the thing.
Oh, you do.
It's the chaperone that you got to do. You know what I mean? It's
Well, that's true.
I remember at Sunday school when my parents sent us to whatever church was closest to where we lived. And so I've been to a lot of different churches, but we lived in one house for about 4 or 5 years, and I went to the Lutheran church around the corner, and the pastor in Sunday school was talking about beware of wolves in sheep's clothing. And he just looked at us all and then said, I could be a wolf in sheep's clothing. And my mind immediately went, you just told us who you are. And I used to babysit his daughters. And then when I was telling my parents, I don't want to babysit there anymore. I don't want to babysit. And they're like, no, you're going to babysit there. I'm like, no, he's a wolf.
We got robbed by a priest once.
I know.
When we lived in England. Yeah, we were moving out, and the local priest came by, or father, whatever you want to call him. I can't remember what religion for what thing. And we saw him steal our vacuum cleaner and some other things out of our house.
Yeah.
While we were moving. I know. It's like things can happen, but it is that thing. But
funny.
So for you, you didn't drop your religious side of life. You still embrace God and your beliefs, right? You didn't say, okay, that's enough of this. You held on to your values of that.
Definitely. I have never given up the Lord, and like I said, I don't think He's given up on me, and I certainly feel like He's leading me on this path, and for everything that has happened in my past, there's a reason, and this may be the reason now that to be able to speak and get the word out there and help others with it. But as far as the church, the church is made up of people that need to be in the church and all. And so,
that's a great
there's always going to be some difficult people. And of course, I led church music in small churches for 10 years. And boy, to see the the flip side of it, it's and the behavior of some people. Not just as a sexual, but difficult and criticizing and everything. We're all human, but I've had to step away from the church itself.
Yeah. And now, what about a relationship? How do you feel about having a relationship now with somebody, like a loving, relationship?
That just doesn't seem to be in my path at all. It never has been. My relationships have always been short-lived, and
passionate. There's a word for it.
I say in the book about one of the first girlfriends and when I was like in junior high and all at church, and I look back and think I really wasn't that great of a boyfriend, but I also think back and wonder that was I so needy because I was used to being the center of attention in relationships, and so but yeah, I seem to always kind of choose badly in relationships, and but I'm okay with the way things are.
I don't think you're alone there.
You're not alone. You're not alone. No, there's something good about being alone, and I think there's, I don't think, that's also that structure of you need to get married at this time, have 2.5 children at this point, and there's that whole thing that we all are supposed to live up to, which is also bogus. To me, it's about you're supposed to live your true purpose and passion. You talk about that too in your book about your purpose, and I think that this is the fact that you're stepping out and really sharing this story again is something important for people. And when people, there's fiction and movies are great. They help open minds and doors and get people out of their comfort zone. But when it's someone's true story, I think people are more apt to read it. And by the way, well written, incredibly well written.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think definitely you're a creative individual with good taste in class, and just it's like you're reading this. It's a hard read for me because you just feel everything. For me, but it was so well written, and you're wanting to know like, okay, he's going to pull through this, and you do, and you're basically it's like being in a conversation with you reading your book. So I was very excited to talk with you, and
That's a wonderful
um,
compliment. I appreciate that.
yeah, you're awesome, and I want to know about Nashville now. So Nashville, what's Nashville like today? Is Nashville a gay-friendly city?
Nashville is, I think, a gay-friendly city. My situation is I work all the time now, and
Right.
so I mean I have some wonderful friends. I'm blessed with that. I feel very comfortable being myself
Mm.
in any situation. But as far as actual gay nightlife or and all, I'm too old for that. But
She's like,
Nashville
I've been
itself,
there, done that.
oh
I've done it.
yes, it's just exhausting to think about. But if
Oh
friends
God,
say,
yeah.
"I've got somebody I want you to meet," it's like, "Oh, please don't."
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm just.
it's like, do I have to really?
I know, I love this. So now
But
we played your song Belle Meade
Funny.
proper. Tell me about that because we've never been to Nashville, but we're hoping to. I think we're going to be coming through this fall. We're driving from Tucson because we travel to national park units and we cover parks. We're on this quest to visit all 418 of these park units, but we're going to go to Natchitoches, Louisiana, and then drive up Natchez Trace Parkway. And I think then from there, we're going to get to central Kentucky, which is our top destination of Springfield, because there's bourbon horses and history there, apparently, that we need to go and experience. But I think Nashville, and everybody, we do so many interviews out of Nashville, musicians, authors, a lot of musicians. And so that's kind of, I was going to say, like, so your gallery, tell us about your gallery and what Nashville's like. I mean, because I know you work a lot. You have an art gallery. You've been doing that for a while now.
I
Tell us about
have,
your
and my
gallery,
gallery,
the name,
my
so everybody
gallery
knows
is actually. I'm sorry, what?
the
The
name of your gallery.
York and Friends
Ah,
Mm.
Fine Art. I had a gallery for many years, which I sold, and swore I wouldn't do this again. And then 7 years ago, I opened this. But I'm working with a lot of the artists I've worked with for 20, 25 years,
wow.
and then I certainly have added artists. But I'm at the point. Um, I'm working with people I want to work with, and that's why the
Mm.
York and Friends. Through the years, I've worked with difficult people because I felt like I needed to, and I don't have to do that now. And so that's how the name came about. These are friends, or I feel like they are friends, and all. And the gallery is actually in Belmead.
It is
Um,
in Belle Meade? Okay,
yeah,
proper, not
yeah.
just Belle Meade, proper. Like,
No, we're not Belmead proper. We're not in
oh,
the proper, but we're actually next door to Belmead Country Club, which is kind of funny. The song I wrote many years ago, Belmead is the old money of Nashville. Now it seems like money is everywhere in Nashville. It's just exploding, but
mm,
Belmead is considered the old money. And so the things, and the Swan Ball is the
yes,
society ball, and for Cheekwood Museum and Gardens, and that's in there. Sperry's Restaurant is in there, which is the neighborhood restaurant, and so it was just kind of a take on that, and it all came about as in the book about the story of the arrogant Belmead woman that wanted to open a bookstore
yes,
in retail space that we had, and I mean the whole thing. If you've seen the movie The Help, you could picture what we
yes,
were going through, and all. And what's interesting is Belmead. There is a set of railroad tracks that runs between Belmead and Westmead, which is where I grew up. And Westmead is a lovely area, but it's not Belmead. And so this song is just kind of a fun
the
takeoff,
real
that
railroad
I
track.
was born on the other side of I was raised on the other side of the tracks, but I always wanted to be in Belmead and all. So I had fun with it. And at the book launch, that was the one song that we played before I started my talk. And of course,
Mm.
with it being local, everybody was falling out laughing at the references. And then when it came time for the last chorus, I just stood up and said, "Everybody sing," and they did. They just sang along. It was so much fun. But that is definitely one of the more fun stories in the book. The other song that I gave you is the one that I wrote for my dad. I thank the Lord for the memories, which after my mother passed away, I wrote this song, which kind of captured what he was dealing with the friends saying, they wanted to fix him up with somebody and all, but he had found the love of his life, and he was lost without her and had really no interest in anyone else. He had enough love from that relationship with my mother to last him the rest of his life. And so that's what this song is about.
Wow. I know you have that in the book too, and everyone, you can read Ron's lyrics in there and poetry, and it's just definitely go get the book. Again, it's Songs from an Imperfect Life on Amazon, all those online places. You can also go to his website, j-ronald-m-york.com. And again, you can go see him in Nashville, right? So people can come in into your gallery, York and Friends, and get your book there and your music, right? That's where people can get your album.
And my paintings.
And your paintings, that's right, because you paint too. See,
but I do represent 40 artists, but I do have some of my work in here too. So I hope when y'all are coming through that you'll stop by.
Oh, of course. We're not going to go through Nashville without coming to see you. No.
Wonderful.
We want to go and you're going to have to show us Belle Meade proper.
That's right.
I want to go on both sides of the track though. We go see where you used to live and
okay.
We
can do that.
Very cool. Very cool. We really appreciate you, number one, writing what you've done and sharing your story with everyone, because I think it's, again, so important that we understand and are aware. That's a very big thing, and I think you've done a lot for kids. And I hope you do go out on a speaking tour and with this, start.
I would love that opportunity. I'm saying yes to practically everything. I just feel like this is the path I'm supposed to be on, and I'm open for it.
Awesome. Everybody, again, j-ronald-m-york.com, M for M&M. Just keep changing that one around. But I want to thank our audience as well, as always, for joining us here on Big Blend Radio. Our shows air Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, Fridays and Sundays at 11 a.m. Pacific Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And you can go to bigblendradio.com to see the schedule, to listen live, or you can listen anytime, and all the links are there to, connect to the shows you want to. And for more author interviews or musician interviews or art interviews, go to blendradioandtv.com. You'll see our departments there for the arts, and also our Big Blend Radio and TV magazine. But we're going to play I Thank the Lord for the Memories now. Thank you so much, Ron, for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. This has been a wonderful experience.
Well, we'll see you soon. We'll see you in the fall.
That's great. We will tour Belle Meade.
I love it.
Well, the old friends check on me, and I say I'm doing fine. They say it's gonna be alright, it's just gonna take some time. Well, I guess I'm glad they worry now that I'm all alone. But with all of their good intentions, silence echoes through our home. After all the years together, I'm left with a broken heart. We said for richer or poorer, in sickness and health, till death do us part. Well, the old friends say there's someone I want you to know. so much in common. Give it a try, well, who knows? But there could never be another in this world to take your place. So I patiently wait until the time once again I'll see your face. After all the years together, I'm left with a broken heart. We said for richer or poorer, in sickness and health, till death do us part. Well, I thank the Lord for the memories of the years, both good and bad. A lifetime spent just loving you. Well, old friends envied what we had. And I'll take those years of memories we shared as husband and wife and lock them away down deep in my heart as they carry me through the rest of my life. I'm left with a broken heart. We said for richer or poorer, in sickness and health, till death do